set this up. So this is a wiretap between Donna and Charlie, which I should have set up earlier. And she's talking to Charlie. This is now after the conviction. I'm sorry, this is a jailhouse call after the conviction. And Donna invokes a name, and it is Dan. Let's listen one more time, then I'll ask Dan some questions. They're actually from Patreon member Bobby.
So after speaking to Dan this morning and knowing what they're thinking up there, and I don't know if we'll make it out in time. I really don't. Because Dan said, you might, or you might do all of it, get to the airport, and they'll stop us. And that could happen. It could happen. I don't know, but it's worth a try.
No, I don't want to give it to you. Why do I have to? Because my attorney said not to. Why do I have to give it to you? Well, this is evidence. She's under arrest.
Dan, I got to say, this doesn't look too good either, what they call a bad fact. Is it you that she's referring to? And did you have prior knowledge of her flight?
So I'm going to read what I've written here so I don't screw this up. Because I anticipated this question would come. I can't talk about what I said or didn't say because it's privileged. What I can say is that at the time Donna Adelson went to the airport, she was a free woman. What I can say is there was no indictment to anyone's knowledge. We know now there wasn't one. There was no grand jury that we knew was convened. We know now it wasn't convened till after. And there was no arrest warrant that was known of. In fact, we know the arrest warrant, I think, was just obtained hours before the flight. Again, she had offered to surrender at any point in time from 2016 on. I know that because I had made that offer. She did nothing wrong by going to the airport. Okay. Now, I cannot tell you what I advised her, what I knew, or what I didn't know. But what I can tell you for certain is that I acted within my ethical obligations. And what I can tell you for certain is that no crimes were committed by her going to the airport. And that's why she wasn't charged with any sort of crimes related to that.
So after speaking to Dan this morning and knowing what they're thinking up there, and I don't know if we'll make it out in time. I really don't. Because Dan said, you might, or you might do all of it, get to the airport, and they'll stop us. And that could happen. It could happen. I don't know, but it's worth a try.
You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record.
Okay, how is everybody? I wanted to talk today about the Adelson defense and show you what I think is proof of how the sausage is made. Now, if you listened to some of the grand jury testimony, I'm sorry. If you listen to some of the jailhouse calls, I got so pulled into that opening talking about Rachbaum. We'll get into that in a second. If you listen to the jailhouse calls, the thing that Donna and Charlie are really stuck on is the fact that the jury is so unfair. And I'll spare you a huge rendition of all the calls in which they talked about how unfair the Tallahassee jury was. I will not play all of those calls, how they could never get a fair trial, meaning Charlie could never get a fair trial. Donna was still a free woman at this point. She was planning to flee. And she had heard from Rachbaum that the grand jury was going to meet on Wednesday. This is my theory. They always meet on Wednesdays, the 16th. And lo and behold, she books a flight to a non-extradition country, Vietnam, for Sunday night, the November 13th. So it's pretty clear to me in that phone call, he's telling her, yeah, you should get out of here. Flee while you're still a free woman. So all that talk that he did in that interview with STS saying, well, there is no crime. Yeah, that's the point of fleeing. There's no crime. Yeah, it's not illegal to flee, but it certainly is not ethical for a lawyer to tell his client to flee the law when you're suspected of a crime. Don't get caught. I know you're guilty. Don't face justice. Here, I'll help you avoid facing justice. And it's kind of been memory hold. So really the person in so much trouble, it certainly looks bad for Donna. And the reason she, any talk of bail, and I don't think Florida is probably stricter than someplace like New York for bail, but any talk of getting bail after you've been caught fleeing is gone. So she's been stuck in that Tallahassee jail because they can't prove that she won't flee. So, but it really brings to mind what kind of team she has, meaning a lawyer that's comfortable telling his client and helping his client essentially flee before any trial, before they can be convicted or even tried and quote unquote exonerated, right? So one of the things that shows how the Adelson team defense worked is one of the reasons they're so obsessed with the jury is that they hired this jury consultant, Josh Dubin, who works as the Innocence Project ambassador. So he does a lot of interviews on Joe Rogan, bringing in people that he feels the last person that he brought in, he felt was wrongfully sentenced into Joe Rogan, and he killed someone brutally in the 2 weeks after his appearance on Joe Rogan, after he was presented by Josh Dubin as a miracle of rehabilitation and that he had gotten such a harsh sentence, really lied by omission. Super sleazy guy. He was also the jury consultant for Harvey Weinstein. And Harvey Weinstein stiffed a lot of his experts. I know Elizabeth Loftus, the memory expert, testified in the Durst trial that she was stiffed by Weinstein. And Dubin, who was Charlie Adelson's jury consultant, the one who did the crazy voir dire, sued Harvey Weinstein. And then all the documents about how that jury consultant worked came out. So we have a sense of how much, if he did for Charlie Adelson, what he did for Harvey Weinstein, and I would think there was no reason to think that he did anything different. I think, if anything, he was more involved in Charlie Adelson's picking of the jury. He did a mock jury where they listened in to what? I don't know if it was only Charlie Adelson's testimony or if it was more of a mock trial. Hard to know. This is something that was done with Kyle Rittenhouse's trial. They get these mock juries together. So the documents from that is out, and it will give you an idea of how much Charlie Adelson was charged and what exactly they do. So not to overwhelm you, I know it's a lot of information all at once. I'm going to go back to the beginning. So we have for Charlie Adelson's team, we have Daniel Rashbaum. Daniel Rashbaum hired Josh Dubin from the Innocence Project ambassador, who's also a jury consultant. And I thought we'd start with taking a look at his voir dire. You guys still with me? Did I lose everybody? I hope not. Does everybody understand where I'm going with this? So you can see the breakdown in the cost. You can see the contract he makes his clients sign. It's pretty interesting. So stay with me. It's going to get good. So here's Josh Dubin, if you don't know, in the Adelson trial, doing one of the craziest voir dires. But I'll just play the beginning, some of the beginning of it. Let's take a listen.
But make no mistake, this is the serious of matters. There's no dispute about the fact that a man quite brutally lost his life. So I don't mean to alienate any of you or make you feel bad, but
I love when they say lost his life. He's murdered, brutally murdered. Already with the minimization, but okay.
to this man, this is no laughing matter. And I'm not here to talk to you about powdered sugar on the faces or phony liquor store robberies. This man has pled not guilty. And with that plea, he's saying, I didn't do it. And stands here accused of a crime that he did not commit. So I would ask you all.
This is something that's really bought into by our media. They always say, he always maintained his innocence. Yeah, as do, it would be more unusual if they didn't maintain their innocence. It's more unusual to stand up and say, I did it. I'm guilty. This is the norm, to either make some kind of plea deal and say you did it, or to go to trial and fight it. And I love the way Josh Dubin's presenting this. Like, this guy said he didn't do it. He's maintaining his innocence. This is put yourself. What he's really saying is put yourself in his shoes. He didn't do it. Charlie Adelson, and as someone who's just been a juror in a criminal trial, it is very powerful when you have someone in front of you and you have their future in your hands, not their life, their future. And it is not anything that any juror, not in the 12 people, the 11 other people that were with me on that jury, take lightly. You're really looking for any small reason to have, anything for reasonable doubt. You're really looking because, and in a murder trial, the victim's gone. He can't be in front of you ever. So they have an advantage in that way.
All to please hit the reset button. And let's be mindful of what is at stake here. And I know from speaking to each and every one of you that you are. The one thing that has become so clear and that I've been so personally impressed by, my colleagues have, is how brutally honest each of you have been. It is not easy sitting in a room full of strangers that are poking and prodding and asking you questions, certainly those that are of a personal nature. I want to apologize in advance, and I want to tell each and every one of you that if I ask you anything that makes you even feel remotely uncomfortable, please, I extend this olive branch to you that with the court's indulgence, you can be heard in private.
Please don't take my creepy personality and maybe a creepy question that I might ask. Don't hold it against my client. Please. That's really what he's
And
saying.
if I say something that makes you uncomfortable and you don't take me up on the offer to be heard in private, accept my apology in advance. I'm just doing my job. As I said, I hope you can appreciate what's at stake here for Mr. Adelson. Is that fair? Okay. One thing we do agree on is that there is a certainly bias can be a dirty four-letter word. We have violent agreement, if you will, on that. Certainly if it's about somebody's sexual preference, religious preference, ethnicity.
So he hammers at home. I've done a whole other episode on this. He really hammers home this innocence. He didn't do it. You got to keep that in mind all the way through to the keep an open mind, right? Not even an open mind. Innocence all the way through to when you get into the jury room. So he really hammers it home. And here's Charlie Adelson talking about him saying he's the best in the country. He comes from the Cardozo Law School, which was where the Innocence Project was born, and where he runs a whole wing of the Cardozo, which is a private law school in New York City. And so much of the Innocence Project and this, what I would call innocence fraud, comes out of the Cardozo Law School, people like Josh Dubin and etc. But let's take a listen to Charlie Adelson talking about the jury, how they couldn't be fair. He hired a jury consultant for probably it probably had to cost $1 million. That was the rumor around. Something like that, $500,000. Am I remembering that incorrectly? Murder by Maestro? I hope I am. Very expensive. He does not come cheap, and will go through it. And what is the first thing when he's convicted he throws under the bus? It's not his own guilt, his own actions, it's the jury. He could never have a fair trial in Tallahassee. Everyone was lying and wanted to convict him from the get-go and send him to prison for life. It's so absurd. Let's take a listen. Here's a short call he had with his mother.
To this number as a private number. To accept charges and consent to this recorded call, press 1. To refuse, thank you for using Securus. You may start the conversation now.
Hey, sorry.
No, it's okay. Yeah, I thought that it finally finally cut.
No, but it just after 7 days, Dan's telling me if he would have been told before we started the case where we are now, how everything's come in, he's like, I would be very excited.
Yeah, he was.
And he's a closer. He always said his best thing is closing. So I said that weekend, I was like, shit, like I did my part. Dan's gonna do his part. He's the closer. Like we got easy street. I'm giving away all my food. Gave away my socks. Oh. I mean,
By the way, Scott Radius is on texting Dad on WhatsApp.
You pick it up now if you wanted to call.
Yeah, but I don't know how much power Charlie has.
I got it super sad. I don't know what, I can't talk. He's on vacation with his girlfriend. Yeah,
Oh. Okay.
That's another thing where I can sort out.
I know all about it. I know what we have. I know about it, honey. We will get that out.
But it's just like, I mean, it's funny, like, that should be a big thing for me. Like, no, I mean, it goes to show you how like insignificant that is compared to everything else. That's just like a
Oh, I know.
fucking breeze.
Drop in the bucket. I know.
Literally like, and you have no idea how much I was looking forward to like having a new direction in life and a new attitude and like clean slate and like, holy shit.
I do know because we were on the same
Yeah.
we were on the same time.
Hold on 1 second.
True.
Yeah, they were all deluded. They were all deluded, shelling out this money for. I thought I did my part on the stand. I thought I did great. Dan gave me a 95, which is one thing that Charlie says that I do believe. It sounds, to me, it sounds right. Doesn't mean it is right. Dan Rashbaum denies giving him a number. But either way, he got the impression he did great from Dan Rashbaum. And the reason we know that Dan Rashbaum was so positive in talking up Donna is Donna went back to him as a lawyer, a criminal lawyer. He was her civil lawyer before this. So will Donna use someone like Josh Dubin after this disaster? She seems pretty cheery. Charlie can't get a fair trial in Tallahassee. It's so against her. It's the Super Bowl of Tallahassee, the Charlie Adelson trial, but not the Donna Adelson trial. Donna Adelson trial, the Charlie Adelson trial was pretty low key in the beginning until people started really watching it. I was watching it because I had interviewed Ruth Markel. But it took a little while for it really to kind of catch fire and then for the whole case to kind of blow up.
Hold on 1 second. Sorry about that.
Okay. That's okay.
Hold on 1 second.
Yeah, we got it.
So yeah, it's like,
Feel like we're living a nightmare. A nightmare.
She feels like she's living a nightmare. No, a life sentence of grief is what you sentence the Markel family to. It's never their actions. It's always, I'm being haunted by Dan Markel's ghost. This family's cursed. It's always some like supernatural force, not their own actions, that caused this. Right? And now we're going to hear about the intense bias of the Tallahassee people against the Adelson family.
yeah. Yeah. Like, what was all? Doesn't seem cool. Like, I literally felt like I was about to win the Super Bowl and like, it went like,
Yeah.
like, I literally never in a million years. I literally took a notebook with me with all my phone numbers on it because I didn't want to leave my phone numbers behind my mail. So I took my notebook
Yeah.
and that's what I brought to the court that day. So I was like, so I have my paperwork with me when I get released from the courthouse. And it's like, and I'm not like high. I'm literally like talking to Dan that's been doing this for 20-something years. Like, how the fuck can you be so wrong? Like, you know, his answer obviously is like, listen, I don't know what the sheriff had to do. I get it, but we also had a fucking jury, the top jury consultants
In the country.
the top in the country. Like,
Yeah. Absolutely.
like he literally like has something at the Cardozo School of Law. Like he is like the guy.
You know.
That's Josh Dubin. He's like the guy at the Cardoza. He calls it Cardozo. Cardoza Law School. He's the top guy there. And just to tell you, let's see. Here he is at the Cardozo Law School. He's the executive director of the Perlmutter Center for Legal Justice. There's his, and you can also go to this is the, sharing it, right. The thing that he runs there. He's the top guy. He's the executive director of that part, but they're leading classes and having, I believe they lead some of these classes. He says they lead in exposing junk science, but to these people, whatever the strongest evidence that is junk science. So whatever the strongest evidence against their client is junk science. If it's DNA, it's been corrupted. If it's a confession, it's a false confession. If it's an eyewitness, eyewitnesses can't be trusted. So
he actually went to school at Florida State. I don't know if you knew that.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. He was roommate with Ronnie Tafanera, who was really good friends with Evan Brown. His college roommate, I used to hang out with at EB's house all the time. He knew Evan Brown. It's a small world. But yeah, he was a student went really far for a guy from Florida State. He is like the premier guy in the country for this. So we brought in the best in the country for this. He was bouncing these ideas off of not just him, but this whole fucking team of lawyers.
Yeah. And
he wasn't just he wasn't. Oh yeah.
Right, because he comes with a whole team, a team of lawyers and assistants. You're going to see how it breaks down. It's extensive. These bills are crazy. They spend so much time researching every little piece of the juror's life, online life, history. I wouldn't be surprised if they put private detectives on them. I don't know what. Wait till we'll see the breakdown in a second.
He put together, a whole group of people, of 30 people to present the case to in September. We did a mock jury, presented to 30 people listening in.
So did you guys hear that? They had a mock jury of 30 people. These things are so expensive. They're paying each mock juror to come in, spend hours of their time listening to Charlie or listening to a mini trial. Hard to know. He doesn't really. That would have been a question I would have loved STS to ask about. There was not a lot of follow-ups in the Rashbaum interview, or not the kind of follow-ups I would have asked, but that's probably why Rashbaum would have never come on a show like this. But what kind of mock jury did you do? What did they say? What was the feedback? I think he said something like it was effective, but what did they say? Instructive? Were they all like, yeah, we don't think that this payment plan with the Latin Kings, it's not really believable. Did they get that kind of feedback, and did they listen? It seems like Charlie and Dan Rashbaum, both are just going to go on their train and not. And they always think they're winning when they're
Telling me
losing.
the worst you're going to do is hang. We're going to win. We're going to win.
He doesn't say that lightly. Trust me. He doesn't say that.
No, because it would make him look like a fool if he walks around going, we're going to, like, telling people you're going to win. And not saying that 6 months in advance. I'm talking
At the trial.
7 days into an 8-day trial. And I'm already done testifying. She would already ask me her fucking questions. I even knew when she asked me, what does Maria do for days? And how old is Maria? Well, like, well, you got nothing else to say if you're going there now.
No, she didn't. She was more. By the way, Kelly, I got notification. I'm looking at
Right. Okay. So just to give you an idea, let's start with so this is basically the lawsuit. This also made the news that Josh Dubin sued Harvey Weinstein for $166,000+. So this is the summons. Defendant Harvey Weinstein is a citizen, engaged DRC to provide, meaning the Dubin, what is it called? I have it up here. His researching company. And they sent out was received by defendants. Okay. But just to give you an idea of the charges, which is really crazy. So drafting a deselection memo, compiling that day's media coverage. So any coverage that's done, and I would think that would include online, podcasters, everything. So that was $1,952 for every day of the Weinstein trial doing that. Background research on jurors. And then they analyze the media. And this I thought was really interesting, of New York, LA, and national publications for close to $4,000. Media analysis, researching New York, LA, and international media for commentaries on Weinstein trial and new LA published, assisting with the drafting of research memos. So what they're looking for here, this is something that I believe the Innocence Project does as well, is they're looking for ideologically aligned journalists that are going to be sympathetic to Charlie Adelson, in this case Weinstein, but Charlie Adelson and his plight, and looking to feed them information, the news stories that they want out. So they're managing the media, they're creating the news. So it looks like it's not biased, right? It comes from a journalist. It's not coming from Adelson's defense team, but it really is. That's what I thought this was. That was of a research memo. So they're saying how the media is reporting the trial. Drafting and revising memos, letter motion for additional procedural safeguards. Legal research. Reading the grand jury minutes. Legal research on recusal. Drafting and revising motion for recusal, background research on jurors. Again, look at all this. Look how many times background research on juror comes up. Background research on jurors, background research on jurors. Searching for late night show media regarding Weinstein. So as they're playing this out in court, they're also trying to manage the media that's coming out of it. Media sweep on the judge. So It's really interesting with these big trials. They're no longer just trying them in court. They're also trying them in the court of public opinion. It's wild. Jury selection in court for jury selection. Background research on jurors again. Background research on jurors. Review jury questionnaires. Look at all this stuff. Legal research for cause challenges in New York. So they're also looking to get it help, maybe looks almost like help get it dismissed on juror issues or on any other kind of issues with maybe the grand jury. So this is what Dubin comes in with, a whole team of lawyers looking for any reason to get these kind of things dismissed. Media analysis regarding jury selection. Jury selection in court for jury selection. Background research on jurors. Slip sheets, social media tracking. So they're tracking the potential jurors' social media, looking for anyone who's commenting on why they're there. I know that was it Charlie Adelson who tried to I'm remembering right that he said that he appealed after the trial saying that they all had a group chat, meaning they were all talking to each other, and maybe that it needs to be researched, and maybe that they were talking about the trial on this group chat and not like where to go to lunch. Background research on jurors, background potential jurors, media analysis. I mean, jury selection, finalizing seating chart. And so when it all comes out, $245,000 and $245,000, 355. I mean, look at this. And car services, working meals you're paying for. And those are all I guess they say all the people and their hours that they come with. So he paid $85,000 and he takes an $80,000 retainer. So who says crime doesn't pay? Or defending people like this doesn't pay? I mean, I just thought this was really fascinating. I mean, you can see here what he says he does. And he just basically took his website and put it, Dubin Research and Consulting is a trial consulting firm guided by Joshua Dubin, Esquire, one of the prominent legal strategy consultants in the nation. Says he, certainly one of the most well-paid. In an industry where a trial consulting firm's excellence is defined by how skilled it is at assisting attorneys craft strategies that translate into victories at trial, DRC has distinguished itself as one of the nation's finest consulting firms. Drawing on our vast experience in social psychology, our innovative information design processes, our proven techniques in the area of jury, judge persuasion, and our acclaimed research methodologies, DRC has developed a highly successful and multifaceted approach to trial consulting that ensures the deselection of potentially harmful jurors. So Charlie was promised that any harmful jurors, they're not jurors who, they're harmful. They're not jurors that are going to maybe look at the bad facts in your case fairly. They're harmful. Maximize the use of technology to facilitate the efficient management and powerful presentation of trial exhibits. Employs persuasive demonstrative aids, and utilizes convincing oral arguments. And trial, I mean, it's just, is this a racket or what? a racket for desperate, guilty people. That's what I see it as. But here you go. So basically, okay, what are their aids? Today's media savvy society. You need basically PowerPoint presentations and aids that are persuasive. Maybe the puzzle pieces. Was this like the puzzle pieces opening? Rashbaum's puzzle pieces opening. So thought that was pretty interesting. I'm going to take a quick break. When I get back from the break, we're going to look at Rashbaum's interview about Donna. Promised he'd do another one, never came back. It was such a disaster. He never came back. Stay tuned. I'll be back in 36 seconds. Don't go anywhere. If you are enjoying this episode of my True Crime Report, please hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share this episode. Get access to exclusive podcasts and other bonus content by becoming a patron today. If you have a question or comment for me, shoot me a super chat and I'll do my best to answer it and read it on air. Thanks so much. Now back to the show. Okay, so let us look at a little bit of Rashbaum's interview, shall we?
How come Harvey and Donna never talked to the police right after Dan died? There was a contentious divorce going on, but someone was murdered here. You'd think that they'd want to help. Why didn't they?
They did talk to the police, both before the memorial service and after the memorial service, and they were never contacted again.
This is such a lie. This is such a lie. They said, yeah, they called like right from, meaning they did talk to the police. The police went up to them and said, I'd love to interview you. And they're like, oh, yeah, definitely. We'll find a time. And then called from the memorial service and said, we're lawyering up. Sorry. Sorry. Yeah. No can do. So, I mean, these are the kind of things he says, like, factually, it's true. Did they talk to the police? Did they say hello? Yeah, maybe. But what can the police do? How much of help are they going to be with their lawyers in Miami to the investigation?
Can you tell us what happened in that? Was that an official? That was not a sit down with Don and Harvey at the police department, was it?
They reached out to the detective, and then the detective talked to them. I believe it was either during or right after the memorial service. And then they were never reached out to again. Wendy was reached out to. We can tell that from the records. But Donna and Harvey were never reached out to again.
Do we know why? Was it because they weren't responding to requests for police interviews, or it was that they were not asked?
They were never asked. Now you'd have to ask the detective about that, but they reached out initially for protection before the memorial service, and then they spoke to Detective Isom shortly, I believe, after or during the service, and then they were never contacted again.
I was there for this for COE and
So wait, so they wanted protection for Wendy? They wanted Wendy to have some kind of bodyguard for the murder I believe she was behind. She's certainly an unindicted co-conspirator. I'm not going far out with that opinion. I've said my reasons over and over again why I think she's involved. But this really has been memory hold, and it needs, I really felt needed a little reviewing here.
Mod to let you know about that. Is this the beginning of some sort of media PR campaign? Because, if we're being honest, Charlie's not a very popular guy, and I believe that's probably the reason he is being held at Shipley, because he has to go into a secure pod at a state prison. Otherwise, he could be in danger. Do you have to, is part of your job as a defense attorney to not make Donna Adelson as low, despised, and abhorred as Charlie Adelson currently is?
I mean, look, I think that the world sees these people through a particular lens. I understand why they see them through the lens, but the reality is they don't know Donna Adelson. They haven't been in a room with her. They haven't spent time with her. They don't know what type of person she is. And so they're assuming certain things. And many of those things are just completely false.
Can
And
you give
so,
us an example? Can you give us a couple of examples?
look, I have spent a considerable amount of time with Donna over the years. She is caring, loving. She is probably the most polite client I've ever had in 25 years of doing this.
The most polite. It's not something that comes to mind when you hear these. Well, she was polite with the undercover. This is Mrs. Adelson. I don't know. Maybe go to the police. I don't know this Tuto, Tato, Hato, Huto you're talking about. I don't know. I don't know who it is. Guess she was polite there, guys. I don't know. I mean, who are his clients? How rude are his clients? That's what I want to know. This all just makes me laugh, this whole thing. I went a little crazy with emojis here, editing this.
She's bright, but not analytical. She's kind. She's someone I like. She's someone I care about. I would go so far to say that. And that's odd for me in representing a client. But in general, what I would say to you is this is a different case, right? With different viewpoints and different reasons why I'm willing to answer questions about Donna. Because I think there's...
I would say as far as true crime comes, this is about as uniform as you're going to get an audience. Occasionally, I do get comments supporting Wendy and Donna and Charlie, occasionally. But I would say that would be point. I mean, I could count maybe I've gotten 10, 20 of them in my time making YouTube videos about this case. I mean, most cases you're going to find someone on much more divided. You're going to offend someone always on anything that you talk about. But this is the most uniform group that I found. Although I have to say, in the trial, Charlie's trial, the Court TV chat I don't think people knew what they were talking about. I think they just came to it really late. And we're just saying innocent, he did great on the stand, that stuff like that. But that's always like that in Court TV chat and Law and Crime chat. It's very defense friendly in the chat. Hey, Dean Walker. Nice to see you. Thanks so much.
There's so much out there in the 7+ years of the media covering this, more particularly the YouTube media and the podcasters is in that vicinity. She drives through that way. And Jeff Lacoste, something that didn't come out at the trial that's come out in depositions and probably would come out at the next trial if this came up, is Jeff Lacoste has testified that they would drive down that road all the time, that Wendy has a bad sense of direction, that she would kind of use where she used to live as a guiding post as to where she was going, and that they would drive down that road a lot of times out of the way to get to places. But I don't.
She asked Jeffrey Lacasse if he thinks Wendy drove by the crime scene by accident. Just ask him. He may have testified that she had a bad sense of direction. But I don't think he'd want to ask Jeffrey Lacasse whether he thinks that Wendy, that morning, he said everything, it was like in his police interview, in one of them, he said it was like a drumbeat. Everything was leading up to that day. That day meant something to me before it even happened. July 18th, 2014.
Don't know personally, other than what she testified to in trial, why she was on that road. Did it hurt Charlie at trial? I'm not sure. I've always seen it as a good fact. If you look at it in a neutral perspective, at least a good fact for Wendy. But I'm not sure that it was either a good or a bad fact for Charlie.
I will respectfully tell you, after looking at a map, that is not bad with directions. That's horrible, awful, or and a very short time frame to accomplish it. If you dressed your kids up in Hitler Youth uniforms and brought them down here, I could care less if it was an act of defiance, and I would show Jibbers, derogatory term for Dan, that he's not in control, all caps. If your children are baptized, it doesn't make them Christian. Ben and Lincoln aren't really pirates because they dress up like Jake the Pirate. It's an act. You got into this mess with Jibbers by being so compliant and non-confrontational with him.
That's what this whole case is about. Who controls? That's what custody is about. Who controls? Dan Markel won't be in control. The Adelson family will be in control. And control is a big theme with Donna and a big theme with Wendy. But Donna likes to be the coordinator. She likes the excitement. She's going to control. Even if it means ending Dan Markel's life, even if it means murder, we're going to control. We're going to win. We're not going to be at the mercy of the courts. We're above the courts. We are the law. And I just love how Donna Adelson plays victim now. Everything happens to me. We're cursed. This is like a nightmare. It's Dan Markel's ghost again. Everything bad comes from Dan Markel. Nothing comes from my own actions.
I don't have the exact date in front of me. Now, I got to say, Dan, we are both Jewish boys. This is not a hateful email, Dan. In my opinion, my mother's a survivor. This is demented. This is not a rational, normal mind. It sounds like she's willing to do anything, talking about how she's willing to get into a mess. Does that include carrying out a murder for hire plot? This is not a rational woman, Dan.
Okay, well, I guess we have to separate the two things. So if you're asking me about the email, the email is clearly not a normal email. I will agree with you on that. It's clearly an email full of emotion. It's clearly an email with venting. Now, what you don't have to that email, which you'll see in this trial, which we haven't seen in the past, is what led to that email. So you won't see the emails from Wendy or the discussions from Wendy, and you don't see the emails from Professor Markel. Okay. Now, having said that, I agree with you. This is not your normal email. Okay. Now, having said all of that, divorces are very emotional. People say things they don't mean to say. People push their buttons.
Wow. Do you think Donna didn't mean any of this? It's an awful lot to write down something you don't mean. So if you're venting, and the only thing that stopped this was Wendy not doing it, right? Wendy thinking better and not doing it. But he does have a point that we didn't see. Of course, we don't see Wendy's emails. She's the lawyer, right? She's going to protect herself from ever writing something like this and leaving herself vulnerable to some kind of discovery where this comes out. And that's going to be the challenge. That's why I believe if Wendy does ever get indicted, why she is last, even though all this was done for Wendy's. She's the one who benefits most from this crime. And she's the one still walking around because she was the lawyer, and this is the way lawyers think. How am I going to protect myself? How can I leave no evidence? But she's impulsive, and she couldn't help herself from driving by the crime scene. And Jeffrey Lacasse was supposed to be the fall guy that nobody listened to. He was supposed to be the crazy, the sky is falling kind of guy. Don't listen to him. He was caught driving by the crime scene in a car that looked just like the killer's car. He's suspect number 1. So he was never supposed to be listened to. Luckily for him, he left before he could be the fall guy. He left too early on his trip to be the fall guy. So that's really one way where their plan really went wrong. But had it gone to plan, he would have been driving right by the crime scene right afterwards in a car that looked just like the car the killer would drive right after Wendy broke up with him. I don't know if it's enough to put him on trial for this, but it was enough to cause a distraction. And so Wendy confessing to him and saying, my brother looked into hiring a hitman for $15,000 or $50,000. He couldn't remember which he heard before, wouldn't really had any power. He would have been crazy guy. And they would have loved that. They would have loved to have seen the police jump on the traps that they set. I mean, if you go to the undercover with Harvey and Charlie, one of the things that Harvey says is, I didn't think the police were that smart. Charlie's looking right at the camera. I mean, it's eerie the way it's like Dahlia DiPolito constantly looking again and again right into the hidden camera. It's like these psychopaths have a sixth sense around these things.
Again, this email is not a normal email, but it is a far cry from, number one, dressing these boys up in Hitler Youth uniforms, which they never were, baptizing them, which they never were. It's an email. It's not an action, or killing Professor Markel, right? So again, is the email itself a rational act? It's an act of someone who's upset, clearly. It's someone who's upset.
But again, you get
divorce. Well, hold on. It's someone who's upset regarding a divorce. And I can show you multiple examples, maybe not with Hitler Youth, but multiple examples where people show emotions in the worst possible ways in a divorce case. Listen, I'm a criminal defense lawyer, okay? There's a reason why I'm not a family lawyer, because family law is the worst. You get emails like this. You get crazy emails like this that generally you don't get in a criminal defense case, right? It's because there is very little that brings out the emotions of people.
Right. In murder trials and other criminal trials like burglaries and other things, emotions are low. Really, Raj? You're not going to see a crazy letter like this in another murder trial. Really? It's only in family law? Come on. Come on. Oh.
More than a vigorous divorce, a bad divorce. And so, again, if you're asking me, is this email the email of a rational person? I could tell you, Donna Adelson is a rational person. Is this an email that she wrote with a lot of emotion that I'm sure she wishes she didn't say the things she said? Of course, right? Was she really going to dress them up in Hitler Youth uniforms? Of course not. Does this email show that she wanted to kill Dan Markel? Of course not, right? If it did, they would have arrested her 8 years earlier, right? So again, I get it. I get why you want to show this email. It's the same reason why the government's going to show this email. It's their start of what they claim is her motive. I get it.
Right. They had all the same evidence 8 years ago. He's saying Jared Ross. It's so wrong. Hey, nice to see you. So wrong, right? I agree. He's so wrong. They had evidence on these guys. They would have arrested. Well, first they were protected by their politics, their politically connected friends. Judge, the Weinsteins. But Meigs, the DA at that time, said we're not going to go any further. This had nothing to do with this letter. This letter is just part of the story. No, it's not the whole answer to the story, but you look at the totality of the evidence. And it was strong against the Adelsons back then.
If I were a prosecutor, I would show it as well. But we also have to look at the context of when the email is done, what it's responding to. And again, there's nothing about violence in the email itself.
You talked about puzzle pieces, but I mean, this is my opinion. The puzzle pieces for Donna are stacked against her right now, but it's your job to show the jury otherwise. Can you tell us, do you plan on calling any new witnesses for this trial? And if so, can you tell us who?
Can't tell you either of those answers. And I can't tell you that we know all the witnesses that we're going to call. We're just getting started.
Can you tell us if it'll be more or less than with Charlie Adelson?
Cannot tell you because I don't know.
Moving back to this whole notion of Donna's arrest and fleeing, I just want to pick another quick soundbite here. This is Donna again, and it's a little tough to hear, but she's asking for air conditioning here. This is arrest video.
Condition doesn't go to the back because of the vent, because of the plastic. Can we open this a little bit then? Absolutely. That's fine. It'll be freezing. You'll be glad you have it.
I can't tell you how many people, Dan, wrote to me and said, why was this even on her mind? Why wasn't she thinking about the much bigger picture here? I asked you earlier, she doesn't seem to ask many questions or proclaim her innocence. This is obviously not a good piece of video for you. So I'm just wondering your strategy and how, again, this is another one of these puzzle pieces, how you portray this to 12 jurors in Tallahassee and show that this is a woman who is remorseful or thinking about a crime that she's being accused of. You obviously don't think that she's guilty though. So, but how do you play this in a courtroom?
So I will say that's the first time I've seen it, that piece. I don't think that's probably that particular piece. I don't think is an issue at all. I doubt it will even be played for the jury. 73-year-old woman who's hot or cold or whatever it was in that piece. Again, it's the first time I've seen it. But as far as why she didn't talk when she was arrested, most defendants don't talk when they're arrested. They're told not to talk when they get arrested. They're told not to talk about the case. In fact, the police read them their Miranda rights, which tells them that. So that doesn't surprise me at all. In fact, I'm glad she didn't say anything. Look, what worries me is, I was in psychology. I took psychology classes in college, right? And so what you read and what you see dictates to some degree what you believe, right? And the reality is she's been portrayed a particular way in the media for the last 8 years that frankly just isn't what she is. And so it does worry me that that's the perception in the media, but hopefully, whether it's in Tallahassee or elsewhere, we get a jury that can look at things with an independent mind. Joel, for instance, I've heard you say here several times in the, hour that we've been talking in response, well, I don't believe that. And the reality is that doesn't affect me at all because I know you're not going to believe it. Because the reality is, and this is not a knock against you, this is just you living with the case, putting on a show every day or every other day about the case. The reality is you don't have an open mind as to the case, right?
I mean, he's got a point, right? We wouldn't be jurors. None of us, we know too much about the case. We're too invested. None of us would be jurors. I agree with him on that. However, and I agree with him that the video of her asking about her sweater, not being surprised, Rashbaum's going to say she just watched her son be wrongfully convicted. She was tipped off by Rashbaum that she was going to be indicted for this, and she was trying to flee. So the fact that she's not surprised, I don't think should be held against her. She knew this was coming down. What's so damning is that she knew that this was coming down, and she felt that she couldn't prove her innocence, that she had. And of course, she's going to argue in court. This is going to be Rashbaum's argument that she watched her son get unjustly convicted in Tallahassee, that there was no way she could have a fair trial with all the media and all the podcasters and everybody against her. She knew she was cooked, even though she was an innocent woman. There was going to be no way that she could prove her innocence, which I don't really buy that line. But that's the way he's going to go with the defense. And I wouldn't be surprised if Josh Dubin shows up once again with his line of, I just think he's, in my opinion, the worst of the worst. I think Murder by Maestro calls him the savior of scum. Makes his living getting off guilty people and then suing for taxpayer money. I mean, it's just, innocent fraudsters are what I consider innocent fraudsters are the worst. I don't have any respect for him, but he's got a point. I mean, you have to say Rashbaum has a point here, that if they're going to say that the fact that she's not like, what, I'm innocent, protesting her innocence on the way. I mean, this has been going on for a long time. It's not like it happened the murder happened a month ago. I mean, this has been a saga, and she has been prepared by Rashbaum. But of course, Rashbaum's also not going to say, like, look, I told her that the grand jury was meeting. They always meet on Wednesdays. Told her they were going to meet. She was prepared. That's why she fled. He's not going to say that either, because that's equally damning.
Oh, journalists are generally cynical, but I agree.
The reality is, no matter what I show you, your mind will not be changed. That's okay. It's not a criticism of you, but that's why you would never be a juror in this case. That's why our jury system is.
Although I would love to see some kind of great evidence of Donna or anyone else's or Charlie's innocence. Just don't give me payment plan with the Latin Kings. I think that's unfair. I think anyone in this juror would not anyone. I think a lot of people in this audience would change their minds. There was some kind of new evidence that came out and we'd say, wow, we were all wrong. That looked weird, but guess we were all wrong. If there was some really compelling evidence, someone else did this. Was behind this in a way that made sense. But all roads lead to the Adelson family. I mean, they chose someone so close to their own family when they chose Katie as the middle woman. Excuse us, Rashbaum. This isn't like the most criminally sophisticated crime.
Up the way it's set. Your listeners, many of them could never be jurors in this case. That's the reality. And the sad thing is, in this day and age where you have 24-hour instant media, it becomes difficult for U.S. citizens and others to have their rights under this country, under our Constitution, to get a fair trial that's unbiased, where the presumption of innocence exists. Right? That's what's scary to me. Right? That is scary to me. That's what keeps me up at night, because any one of us would separate.
Right, but they don't mind. These same people, I would be more moved by this plea if these same kind of people don't start. I mean, why is he on STS when he's talking about, I guess he would argue, I'm just trying to even out the bias. But these characters seem really comfortable playing this out in the court of public opinion. I mean, need I go back to this bill from Harvey Weinstein, from Josh Dubin? How much they're looking at the media, how much they're looks like they're trying to liaison with the media and try to make favorable articles about the trial and about their side of the story. So they don't mind bias as long as it's bias for them. That's my point.
Us from other countries is any one of us could be charged with a crime at any time. But thank God in this country, we have a system that protects the rights of the accused. And by the way, if anyone wants to see the biggest advocate of this system, if anyone wants to honor his legacy to the greatest degree, read Professor Markel's writings, because this is something that he was as passionate, if not more passionate than I am about it, right? And frankly, he would be appalled by some of this. He would be appalled by the fact that we had in Charlie's case over 100 jurors who came in that room and said that they could not presume Charlie Adelson to be innocent, that he was starting from behind. That is the exact opposite of what Professor Markel fought for his entire career. That is the exact opposite of that. That does dishonor to him. And
but
so
wouldn't he be happy that they were honest and said, look, I've read too much, my opinion is too formed, don't choose me. And also, we don't know if those people were also just trying to get off of jury duty. Like, I don't want to be paid $40 a day. I mean, that's what it is in New York, $40 a day to sit all day in a trial. I don't want to have some guy's future in my hands. I know too much. It's an easy way to get off of it.
He'd also be appalled at a murder for hire on anyone. So
for sure he would, as would we all. Yeah. But the reality is, you ask me, does it keep me up at night that I have to defend things like that? And the answer is yes, because normally in a normal case, the way we do that is in a courtroom, not on a TV show, not on a YouTube, not with people commenting about the case every day, a case that frankly, they don't know a lot about, And
so Patty says it's $15 in Leon County, which is where this is. So you get $15 as a juror in Leon County, Florida. So that's what Donna's jurors will be paid according to Patty's Playhouse. Nice to see you, Patty. But to bring up Dan Markel's name and his writing when you're defending the people accused of murdering him and one who was convicted of murdering him is a little morally uncomfortable. That's the fairest way I can put it.
So yes, that does keep me up at night because I believe in our system. And I've fought for our system for 25 years on both sides of the aisle.
Took some heat for bringing in high-powered Josh Dubin as a jury consultant. Are you going to be choosing the jury this time around? And I know you had told me in a conversation that we had leading up to this that you were actually present for jury selection and were even asking questions at Charlie's trial. A lot of people think that Dubin swept in, took a big fee, and flew out. But what was the dynamic there?
None of that's true. I mean, Josh is he's done this many times with many cases. And he didn't choose the jury. I didn't choose the jury. Charlie didn't choose the jury. We all chose the jury. I participated in jury selection. I didn't ask the voir dire questions of the ultimate voir dire panel. And that was done for strategic reasons. I've done that several times in trials that have been won. So it's not out of the norm for me. What we do in this case, we're still figuring that out. But the reality is there was nothing very exceptionally weird about what we did in that case. And again, there's misinformation.
It was exceptionally expensive with Josh Dubin and not very effective. I hope Donna doesn't. Why do I care if Donna wastes her money? I don't care if she wants to waste her money with Josh Dubin. My opinion. Don't sue me, Josh Dubin. Patty's Playhouse. Thanks for becoming a member. And helping keep the channel going. I appreciate it. This is just crazy here. Totally crazy. He's like, I won cases when I did voir dire. Maybe you should have done voir dire then. He was certainly off-putting. That was the comment when I talked to Patty and Sonny Tanner. Both found him really, Josh Dubin, super creepy. It's not a likable person.
That I didn't participate in jury selection. Of course I did. Just like there's misinformation that I don't know anything about Tallahassee and I'm a New Yorker. I'm born and raised in Florida.
But let's listen and questions.
He's born and raised in Florida and he certainly knows when the grand jury, what day the grand jury gets together. He certainly knows that. That's my opinion on it. And he sure, in my opinion, is he tipped Donna off. That's from the call where she says what they're thinking about. Dan told me what they're thinking about.
We'll follow.
After speaking to Dan this morning and knowing what they're thinking of.
Okay, so we've come full circle. We've come full circle with this. That's what I think I have for today, guys. Please hit the thumbs up. Really helps get out the video. Leave me a comment. Share this episode. But I thought it was interesting. It will give you an idea of how expensive these jury consultants are, what Josh Dubin does, what's going on behind the scenes, why you shouldn't feel sorry for Charlie Adelson when he boo-hoos that their jury was so unfair and that they can't, and no Adelson can get a fair trial in Tallahassee. I mean, these jurors were researched and researched and researched. And the media was managed as much as it could be and followed. So they had every advantage and still lost and still got convicted. Charlie did in 2.5 hours. And I seem to be the only one considering that Donna we may get some kind of, considering the possibility that Donna could be acquitted. I think it's always possible. You never know which way a jury's going to go. Just because Charlie was convicted really quickly does not mean it's going to happen for Donna. She certainly has the age and she has her biological sex on her side. She's an older woman. She may be more, I don't know. She one or two jurors, we may have a hung jury. One or two jurors may find her really sympathetic. We don't know. I think it's really dangerous to say any case is a slam dunk, but we shall see in September. It's coming awfully close, right? Getting awfully close to Donna's trial. Have a great night, everybody. I'll see you Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern.